And I knew immediately it was Keanu Reeves. And I, of course, was like freaking out. He, you know, do you need some help? And I'm like, sure.
What do you think happens when we Keanu Reeves?
I know that the ones who love us will miss us.
Keanu Reeves, a star known for his humility, faced a shocking encounter on a first-class flight. As the line moved to board, an arrogant businessman unleashed a string of insults, mocking Keanu's unassuming attire and quiet demeanor. The ridicule escalated on board, where the businessman's arrogance clashed with Keanu's calm composure. Let us delve deeper into this electrifying moment, one that left the entire cabin in stunned silence. A tale of simplicity and arrogance. The renowned actor Keanu Reeves waited patiently in the first-class boarding line, looking like the most out-of-place person there. His plaid shirt, worn-out jeans, and old boots painted a picture so different from the sleek, polished travelers around him. He carried a backpack that looked like it had seen more adventures than the entire boarding area combined. No one seemed to notice him, or if they did not pay much attention. The unassuming star did not care. He stood quietly, observing the endless rush of people and the organized chaos of the airport. But inside that old backpack was something that would change everything for everyone on the plane. Behind him stood Victor Harding, who looked like the complete opposite. Victor's suit screamed money, his shoes shone brighter than the terminal's glossy floors, and his cologne left a trail so strong it probably boarded the plane ahead of him. His demeanor matched his appearance, confident, loud, and unapologetically self-important. Victor's eyes scanned the line, resting on the casually dressed traveler for a moment longer than anyone else. There was a flicker of disdain, as if he could not fathom why someone like that was in the same line as him. The line moved forward, and soon the two men found themselves next to each other. Victor, unable to resist, made a pointed comment about how surprising it was to see someone so casually dressed in first class. The composed reply from the reserved passenger, a polite acknowledgement without any hint of offense, seemed to annoy Victor more than anything. Victor's smugness grew, as if he had found a new target to subtly belittle for the duration of the flight. When they boarded the plane, the plot thickened. Victor's face fell when he realized his seat was right next to the unbothered traveler. His disbelief was palpable. He muttered something under his breath, shaking his head as if the universe had played a cruel joke on him. The laid-back individual, on the other hand, simply smiled and settled into his seat with the same calm energy that had followed him through the airport. As the flight attendants began serving drinks, Victor wasted no time ordering champagne, making sure everyone around him knew he was a man of exquisite taste. When it was the quiet traveler's turn, he asked for water. This simple request became another opportunity for Victor to mock him. With a condescending laugh, he questioned the choice, insinuating that anyone in first class should be indulging in luxury, not settling for simplicity. The polite man's calm reply about finding satisfaction in simplicity did not sit well with Victor. He continued to prod, asking intrusive questions about his profession, clearly fishing for reasons to justify his low opinion of the individual. When the traveler mentioned he worked in film, Victor jumped to conclusions, assuming he was involved in minor projects or commercials. Victor's condescending remarks flowed freely, each one aimed at reinforcing his sense of superiority. Passengers around them began to notice the dynamic. Some exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with Victor's behavior. The serene passenger, however, remained unshaken. His responses, though brief, carried a weight that seemed to disarm Victor's arrogance bit by bit. The conversation took a turn when Victor, emboldened by his champagne, began making sweeping statements about success, status, and how some people simply did not belong in certain spaces. The composed man's response was subtle but sharp. He spoke about the true value of being in any space, suggesting it was less about status and more about how one treated others. This remark seemed to hang in the air, drawing silent approval from nearby passengers. Victor, however, was not ready to back down. He continued his tirade, dismissing the thoughtful observation as cheap philosophy, and insisting that the real world did not work that way. But the more Victor spoke, the more apparent it became that he was losing the room. The passengers, who had initially been silent observers, were now visibly siding with the calm traveler, their disapproving glances making Victor shift uncomfortably in his seat. The tension reached its peak when the flight attendant approached the reserved man with a message from the captain, confirming his connection in Tokyo and sending his regards. The mention of his last name triggered a ripple of recognition among the passengers. Yes, Keanu Reeves was discovered. Murmurs spread through the cabin and all eyes turned to Victor, who looked as though he had just been hit by a freight train. Realization dawned slowly but painfully for Victor. He stared at his seatmate, his smug confidence replaced by a mix of shock and embarrassment. He stumbled over his words, attempting to backtrack and justify his earlier behavior, but it was too late. The composed man, ever poised, reminded Victor that how one treated others mattered more than their status or possessions. Victor's demeanor changed noticeably after that. He sat quietly for the remainder of the flight, avoiding eye contact with his seatmate and the other passengers. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by a visible discomfort that lingered until the plane landed. Meanwhile, the unassuming star returned to his book, seemingly unaffected by the entire ordeal. As the passengers disembarked, some stopped to exchange kind words with Keanu Reeves, acknowledging him with admiration. Victor, on the other hand, lingered in the terminal, watching from a distance as the celebrated figure interacted graciously with fans. It was a stark contrast to the man Victor had judged so harshly only hours earlier. The experience left Victor with much to think about, the weight of his actions pressing heavily on his mind. The flight might have ended, but a new stage was being set, one where roles were about to shift in unexpected ways. The power shift that changed everything. The Grand Horizon Hotel was alive with the usual chaos of a busy afternoon. The polished floors glimmered as luggage wheels clattered and guests hustled to check in. Emma, stationed at the front desk, worked to maintain her poise despite the surge of activity. Behind her, Benson, the ever-watchful and sharp-mouthed manager, barked occasional orders, ensuring everyone knew he was in charge. Just as Emma steadied herself for another wave of guests, the glass doors slid open. A tall figure entered, dressed in unremarkable clothes, a black jacket, faded jeans, and boots that had clearly seen better days. Carrying only a single duffel bag, the man surveyed the room with a quiet confidence, his calm demeanor contrasting the bustling scene around him. Emma noticed him almost immediately, her trained smile flickering slightly as his piercing gaze briefly met hers. Something about him stood out, though she couldn't put her finger on it. He approached the desk, setting his bag on the floor beside him. Emma greeted him with her polished professionalism. However, Benson's sharp eyes had also noticed the man. With his usual brand of disdain, Benson sauntered closer, clearly unimpressed by the stranger's modest appearance. The manager's condescension practically radiated from him as he eyed the man's scuffed boots and plain attire. Benson muttered something under his breath, dismissing the man as just another drifter who'd wandered into the wrong place. Emma tried to mask her discomfort as Benson directed her to assign the man a room. Without hesitation, Benson insisted on giving him the smallest, cheapest option, muttering his assumption that the guest likely couldn't afford much else. The man accepted the treatment without a hint of protest, his calm demeanor never wavering. Taking the key card from Emma, he offered a subtle, knowing smile before heading to the elevators. As the elevator doors closed, Emma couldn't help but feel uneasy. Something about the encounter didn't sit right with her. The man's confidence and poise didn't align with Benson's assumption of him being just another low-budget guest. Whispers began circulating among the staff, fueled by the mysterious air surrounding their newest visitor. Later that evening, as the hotel settled into a quieter rhythm, Emma noticed the same man emerge from the elevator. His unhurried stride and composed expression made him stand out in a way that demanded attention. Approaching the front desk, he spoke in a tone that was firm yet kind, pointing out an oversight in the hotel's room service menu. His observation was simple but insightful, highlighting a lack of detail in the hotel's management. Before Emma could respond, Benson stormed out of his office, his face flushed with irritation. Clearly, he'd been monitoring the exchange. In his usual brash manner, he dismissed the guest's comments as unnecessary criticism, once again insinuating that someone staying in a budget room had no right to offer advice. The man's expression shifted slightly, showing a glimmer of authority that hadn't been apparent before. Despite Benson's hostility, he maintained his calm demeanor, delivering a pointed remark about the importance of proper management. The tension between the two was palpable, with Benson's arrogance clashing against the guest's quiet strength. Finally, the man walked away, leaving Benson fuming and Emma grappling with her growing suspicion that there was more to this guest than met the eye. The next morning, the hotel staff's unease had reached a boiling point. Emma arrived for her shift to find whispers flying among her colleagues. Something was happening in the VIP lounge. A group of sharply dressed individuals had arrived early that morning, asking specifically for the mysterious guest. They exuded authority, their tailored suits and composed expressions setting them apart from typical visitors. Benson, predictably, was less than thrilled. Storming toward the lounge, he attempted to assert his dominance, only to be rebuffed by the group. His frustration was evident as he returned to the lobby, barking orders and questioning Emma about the guest. Emma could only offer cautious answers, unsure of what to make of the situation herself. The tension came to a head when Benson barged into the VIP lounge uninvited. From the lobby, Emma couldn't see what transpired, but she could hear the heated exchange. Benson's usual bravado was met with an unexpected revelation. The mysterious man calmly stated that the hotel was no longer Benson's domain to control. It was now under new ownership, and that owner was none other than him. The announcement sent shockwaves through the staff and guests alike. Benson's smug demeanor faltered, his face paling as he tried to process the information. Meanwhile, Emma watched from the front desk, her mind racing. The quiet man who had been dismissed as a nobody had just turned the entire hierarchy of the hotel upside down. The air in the hotel grew thick with uncertainty. Staff whispered among themselves, exchanging nervous glances as they awaited further instructions. Benson retreated to his office, visibly shaken, while the new owner conducted private meetings with his team of executives. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she'd been swept into something far larger than the daily grind of her front desk duties. The man's calm authority and decisive actions had already begun to ripple through the hotel. While Benson seethed in his office, plotting his next move, the rest of the staff could only watch and wait, unsure of what the future held. What was clear to everyone, however, was that things at the Grand Horizon Hotel were never going to be the same. As the hours stretched on, the whispers among the staff intensified. Emma overheard snippets of conversation, fragments that hinted at the true nature of the man who now owned the hotel. Some speculated he was a wealthy investor, while others believed he was part of a larger corporate group. Whatever the case, the staff knew one thing: their jobs and routines were about to change dramatically. Meanwhile, Benson's frustration had boiled over into full-blown anger. He called for an emergency meeting with his department heads, demanding an explanation for how the ownership had changed hands without his knowledge. The department heads, equally blindsided, could only offer vague answers, their uncertainty adding fuel to Benson's growing paranoia. Emma's day continued as she tried to stay out of the fray, but her curiosity was impossible to ignore. The mysterious man's interactions with the executives had been brief but telling. He carried himself with an air of control, his decisions swift and deliberate. Each move he made seemed to confirm his role as the new authority figure within the hotel. The man's calm yet firm demeanor left a lasting impression on everyone he encountered. He spoke to the staff with a level of respect that was rare, especially under Benson's management. Even Emma, who had grown used to the sharp edges of Benson's leadership, found herself drawn to the man's quiet strength. By midday, it became clear that the changes were not limited to the staff. The new owner had begun implementing updates throughout the hotel, starting with the long overdue maintenance of public areas. The mismatched furniture in the lobby was replaced with sleek, modern pieces that exuded sophistication. The peeling paint on the walls was swiftly addressed, and a team of decorators worked tirelessly to refresh the space. Emma couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between the man's approach and Benson's. Where Benson had relied on cutting corners and maintaining the status quo, the new owner seemed intent on elevating the hotel's standards. His vision for the Grand Horizon Hotel was clear, and his actions left no room for ambiguity. As the day wore on, Emma's interactions with the man became more frequent. He sought her out for assistance with minor tasks, each interaction brief but meaningful. He treated her with the same respect and professionalism he extended to everyone else. a stark departure from Benson's dismissive attitude. Despite her initial reservations, Emma found herself warming to the man's presence. His confidence and clarity of purpose were reassuring, even as the uncertainty surrounding the hotel's future lingered. She couldn't help but wonder what other changes were on the horizon and how they would affect her role within the hotel. Meanwhile, Benson's attempts to regain control grew increasingly desperate. He made a series of bold but ill-advised moves, including challenging the new owner's authority in front of the staff. Each confrontation ended the same way, with Benson's bluster deflating under the weight of the man's quiet resolve. By the time the sun set on another eventful day at the Grand Horizon Hotel, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The staff, once divided and uncertain, began to rally around the new owner's vision. His leadership inspired a sense of hope and possibility that had been absent for far too long. As the night settled over the city, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the Grand Horizon Hotel was on the cusp of a transformation. The man who had entered so unassumingly had already made an indelible mark, and it was clear that his presence would continue to shape the hotel's future in ways no one could have anticipated. It was only later, as the staff pieced together scattered hints and whispers, that the truth fully emerged. The mysterious new owner of the Grand Horizon Hotel was none other than Keanu Reeves. His unassuming entrance and quiet authority had concealed his identity, but the deliberate actions and respectful demeanor left no doubt that he was a man of immense influence. The revelation only deepened the impact of his arrival, leaving the staff in awe and reshaping their perception of the man who had so effortlessly turned their world upside down. The Grand Horizon Hotel might have unveiled its surprises, but a simple act of kindness was about to ripple through the bustling heart of Manhattan. Joe's Diner and the Unexpected Ally. On a winter evening in Manhattan, December 17th to be exact, a little diner on 7th Avenue was bustling. The name, Joe's Diner. Nothing fancy, just a cozy spot with clinking dishes and endless coffee refills. Inside, Emily Carter, a 26-year-old waitress with caramel-colored hair and a smile that could melt an iceberg, was zipping between tables. She was saving for art school, one coffee cup at a time. The weather was harsh that night, a storm looming, and a man in ragged clothes shuffled through the door. He looked like he had not seen a warm bed in years. His eyes darted around nervously while others quickly found their food or their phones more interesting. Emily, though, could not ignore him. She asked if he was hungry. He nodded, barely able to meet her gaze. Without hesitation, she led him to a booth near the heater. Minutes later, she placed a plate of meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and green beans in front of him. It was not just food, it was kindness on a plate. The man's hands trembled as he picked up his fork, tears brimming in his eyes. Not everyone was impressed. Mr. Daniels, the diner's manager, stormed out from the kitchen. His sharp voice sliced through the hum of the room. Emily, who had just returned to the counter, found herself in the crosshairs. He reminded her that this was not a charity, informed her that the meal was coming out of her paycheck, and then fired her on the spot. No second chances, no understanding, just pack your things. Emily did not argue. She untied her apron, told the man to finish his meal, and walked out into the biting cold. She sat on a bench nearby, wondering how she would explain this to her roommate or cover rent. Snowflakes began falling, light at first, then heavier. Her thoughts were interrupted when a sleek black sport utility vehicle pulled up outside the diner. Out stepped Keanu Reeves, the last person anyone expected to see. He walked into Joe's like he belonged there, scanning the room with purpose. His eyes landed on the man at the booth, still picking at the remnants of his meal. Keanu approached him, exchanged a few words, then turned his attention to the manager. Whatever he said left Mr. Daniels looking like he had just seen a ghost. Keanu walked out minutes later, his expression calm but resolute. Outside, he spotted Emily on the bench. Approaching her with quiet steps, he spoke gently, introducing himself and acknowledging what he had overheard. Emily, stunned, barely found the words to respond. He told her that kindness like hers was rare, and that she should not let the loss of her job shake her belief in doing the right thing. His words were a lifeline in a storm. Keanu did not stop there. He handed her a card with the name of an organization, Hope Horizons. They help people get back on their feet, he explained, and he thought she would be a perfect fit. Emily hesitated but eventually took the card, her fingers trembling. The next day she called the number. A woman named Anna answered, welcoming Emily to visit their center. By that afternoon, Emily was standing outside a modest building in Brooklyn, feeling both nervous and hopeful. Inside, Anna greeted her warmly, explaining that Keanu had spoken highly of her and that they always needed people who genuinely cared about others. Over the next weeks, Emily threw herself into the work. She helped organize meal programs, connected with shelters, and even started an art therapy workshop for those in need. Her days were long, but for the first time in a while, her heart felt full. The kindness she had shown that night at Joe's was rippling out in ways she had not imagined. Months later, during a rainy evening as Emily cleaned up after a workshop, the door to the center opened. Keanu stepped in, his coat dripping, his familiar kind smile lighting up the room. He had heard about the work she was doing and wanted to see it for himself. Their conversation was brief, but meaningful. Before he left, he handed her a small package, a leather sketchbook with a note inside. For the artist who paints with kindness, never stop creating. As the rain continued outside, Emily clutched the sketchbook, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Keanu's gesture reminded her of something she had almost forgotten, that even in the harshest moments, kindness could spark something extraordinary. Can acts of kindness change someone's destiny, or are they fleeting moments? Like, comment, and subscribe to share your perspective and explore more thought-provoking content with us.